Hi, my name is Ashlee Nagle. I teach 6th grade math at Algona Middle School and am a graduate education student at Morningside College. This is my technology-based research project presentation. The problem that I was trying to solve was the lack of individualized instruction in classrooms. We know that no two students learn the same way, so for teachers to expect everyone to learn at the same rate and in the same way is very unfair. During my research, I found that instructional pacing plays an important role in student achievement. The first step of this process was to complete a literature review. After the completion of that, these are my key findings. Lower levels of test anxiety when students use self-paced math. Students feel more responsible for their learning. They have higher levels of mastery. They believe that everything they work on is valuable and found it to be important. There are higher scores on unit tests, better attitude towards learning, and increased behaviors, meaning that behavior was more positive and less off task. I started with 3 possible solutions. The first was to do 100% self-paced math, and that gave students everything at the beginning of the semester and they complete it completely on their own at whatever pace they feel is appropriate. The second option was flexible pacing. This is similar to self-paced math, but it gives students minimum deadlines to complete work quizzes and tests. Teachers set the range and then students work on their progress. The third was to do individualized instruction for every student. That would mean creating a unique education plan for all 98 students in my math room. My chosen solution for this project was flexible pacing. I chose flexible pacing because it's different than self-paced math, and that the teacher still has some control over the pacing. In self-paced math, students are free to complete the curriculum whenever and however they want to. That can lead to procrastination and higher dropout rates. But in flexible pacing, teachers are able to influence student achievement by reminding them of academic goals on a daily basis. Here is an example of the weekly schedule that I shared with students. They had access to this through a Google document, and all of the blue links took them right to what they needed to work on for each day. Monday is the first column, and it was a mini lesson. Tuesday was a task day. We started using Solve Me puzzles to incorporate problem-solving skills and thinking outside the box. Wednesday was a designated work day for students where they would work on whatever unit they were currently on. Thursday was a spiral review day, so they spent the first 10 minutes doing review problems of things they've learned, and then they would have work time after that. And Friday was a fact fluency and computation day. They'd spend the first 5 minutes doing a fact fluency test, and then after that they'd answer 7 computation problems, and then they'd go on to working on their unit. Here is an example of the unit outline that students were given. So for every unit, I had these created and planned. They were shared via Google Docs, and every video and exercise was linked so that all they had to do was click on it. It would take them to the correct location. And you can also see the I can statements are included so that students are aware of what skill they were working on. This is an example of a student checklist. It goes right along with the unit planner that I just showed. Students were given this, and you can see there's a column for them to initial when they complete something, but also a column for myself. When I initial it, I look for video notes that are well taken, not just a bunch of slop on paper, that they have scratch work to prove their thinking, and I also give them a couple probing questions to see if they really understand what that practice was over. Here is my implementation schedule for the 4 weeks that I was working on this. This is what was originally set, but definitely changed as the weeks went along. I'm not going to go into great detail about that right now, but I will a little bit later when I talk about the improvements. So here are the improvements from each week. Week 1, a major problem was student progress. I found that they did not really grasp the flexible pacing And so we began setting a weekly goal so that students knew what they needed to complete each week to stay on task. That weekly goal was basically what the average pace would have been if we were teaching in a traditional classroom. During week 2, I noticed that it was very hard to keep track of student progress and where every kid was at. So I created a Google spreadsheet where students updated their progress, and I could very easily take a look and see where each student was at. This wasn't the best solution, but it was better than what I had before. Week 3, I've noticed a problem with students not working collaboratively together. I felt like they were stuck in their desk too much, working by themselves all the time. So we incorporated the Task Tuesday. There are also task cards that students would work on in groups. And we also used an I can help and I need help board that I will show you here in a second. And then week 4, I realized that there's a need for multiple assessment versions and also still need to work on that progress monitoring problem. Here's an example of the progress monitoring spreadsheet. Over on the left are the student ID numbers. I had to go with student ID numbers to keep information confidential, but that made it much harder for me because I don't have those ID numbers memorized, and I also couldn't put them in alphabetical order. But you can see here, students put an X in the box when they've completed an assignment, and then it will automatically color code it for me. So I can see that this third row student is probably a little bit behind, and there's something that I need to check up with on them. Here is the I need help, I can help board. So students who need help would put their name under there, and that would let me know who needed help and who was first in line. I can help is peers who feel confident in their abilities to teach others, so they would put their names there. That would let other students in this column know that they can also go to those students for help if I'm busy or taking too long to get to them. And then the initials list is just for students who have completed assignments and are ready for me to initial on their checklist. Here is some results from a student survey that I gave at the end of my research project. One of the questions was, in self-paced math, I am generally, and we found that 51% of students were generally right on pace. About 31% were ahead of pace, and 18% were falling behind pace. I also asked students a question about their test and quiz scores and in which category they fall. I found that in self-paced math, 90% of students were getting A's and B's on tests and quizzes. That's partially because I forced students to make corrections. They must make at least one round of revisions before I will put it in the gradebook. This question found that 84% of students prefer self-paced math over traditional math. And 80% of students believe that it helps them learn math. So even if they do not prefer self-paced math, they're admitting that it helps them learn. And 86% of students would choose self-paced math. So even some students that don't necessarily like it would still choose it over the traditional classroom. The 10 milestone steps were extremely helpful in completing this project. It helped me develop a well thought out plan that was logical. It really forced me to reflect and make improvements on a daily and weekly basis, which I feel like greatly impacted the results of my project. And it creates small steps in the right direction instead of taking giant leaps without knowing where you're going to land. I've seen a lot of teachers do that, where they have a great idea and want to try something, they do it, and it's a complete disaster, and they're devastated and not sure what to do. This did not happen because I had small steps that was thought out, and it helped me guide my thinking and my process. Here is my reference page. Thank you for listening to my project presentation.